Director for Government and Regulatory Affairs.
Thank you. Thank you all. When you talk to people about geothermal, don't talk to them for an hour or 2 hours, or tell them everything you've ever known about geothermal. We want to get them involved. But in my introduction, I worked for Ormat for about 8.5 years, and then I went to the dark side and worked for the state of Nevada as the governor's energy advisor. And then I was the chairman of the Public Utilities Commission. So I've worked on the private sector side. I've worked on the policy implementation side, and I've worked on the regulatory side. Now I've come back to Ormat. For those 15 years, we talk a lot to legislators. And they may not be the best example, but if you don't talk at a third grade level, your message will be lost. And so I think what many of us do in this room and what many of us do out there in all these sessions is try to explain everything in our first encounter. And we need to stop doing that. So when you have the elevator speech, it's not that the person in the elevator should understand everything that you're talking about, but they should say, I want to come back to that person and learn more and try to figure it out. Number one, geothermal is valuable. We hear all the time, it's too expensive. We heard the panelists at the opening session. The price needs to come down. We can talk about that, but the value of geothermal is unparalleled. Today in geothermal, it's worth more than solar. Full stop. If you want to read papers and papers about it, you can. The value of geothermal is increasing. And it's done so since 2014. Duh. Did you know that? Solar, when it first came online, was great. It was producing power in the middle of the day, during the peak. It was the phenomenal resource. California then went crazy, OD'd on it. Developed 19.5 gigawatts of solar. And all of a sudden, its energy value plummeted. Intermittent resource in the middle of the day. You don't need more of it. So, you know, our value is increasing. And it's been doing so since 2014. I didn't even get started on capacity, because capacity factor nobody even understands. But if they say, what about capacity? Let's go down that road and have that conversation. Geothermal has like a 95% capacity factor. What does that mean? You know, I think we also have to worry about terminology. No legislator in the world knows what a capacity factor is. Say it runs 95% of the time. And then they go, wow. And it can produce power 95% of the time. It's cost effective. The CPUC in California is currently procuring geothermal. We have a great paper on it at the Ormat booth. We can talk in depth, but at the end of the day, compared to all of the resources in California, the CPUC says that we can cost effectively develop 2,000 megawatts of geothermal. It actually goes a step further. They want to see 2,000 megawatts of geothermal being procured by their investor-owned utilities, CCAs, which are, because we should never use acronyms, community choice aggregators, load-serving entities, whoever that is coming before the California Public Utilities Commission. It works well with others. I think we have to be careful because there's a bit of this us versus them mentality, and that can get awkward in an elevator if you're talking to a solar developer or a legislator from Kansas. So I make this joke. There's no silver bullet. This is the profile of a solar project with storage. The end-all be-all to save the world. You see a pretty prominent curve because the sun's radiance changes throughout the year. It charges the battery differently throughout the year. And so what's a good profile that matches this? Oh, that's a geothermal profile. You don't have to explain the details of the solar profile. It's just that it matches well. When solar's not producing, geothermal tends to be producing the most amount of power that it can. And if you want to see an increase in a renewable portfolio standard, or talk to people who want to go 100% renewable, we need to develop all of these resources. No CO2 emissions. The California Air Resource Board defined geothermal facilities that have a direct use or closed loop as carbon-free. I'm surprised no one's raising their hand to argue with me about flash facilities, but I think we should keep the message simple, which is it's either low emissions or no emissions. I like no emissions. If you want to talk to me about the geysers or a flash plant that has minute emissions that CARB, regulates, let's have that conversation. But I've got you hooked if I say it has no emissions. It's a fully flexible baseload resource with no emissions. Let's continue the conversation. Small environmental footprint. Kate touched on this. I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, but my short answer is it takes up 22 times less surface disturbance than solar. This is a real project for us, 144 megawatts in Austin, Nevada. It takes up 146 acres of disturbance. An equivalent solar project based on the megawatt hours of production, which nobody knows what you're talking about, takes up 3,200 acres. What? You can graze sheep right on top of the project? Are you kidding me? These are the pictures that I think are worth 1,000 words as well. We have farmers raising sheep right at the foot of our power plant. So even where that disturbance was, it comes down in that environmental footprint. And of course we can do that. Can geothermal do this? Can it do that? Can it provide flexible capacity? Can it provide regulation? Can you ramp it up and down? Can you stop it? Can you start it? Can you do what? Yes, 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 yes. It's amazing. It's a phenomenal resource, and it's so much fun to talk about. And so when you leave here today, geothermal is valuable. It's cost effective. It works well with others. It has no emissions. It has a tiny environmental footprint, and it can do that. Did I get done in time? I think these are the takeaways that all of you should be able to do in an elevator or with a glass of wine with someone and get the conversation started.